We're live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I wanted to call this meeting to order on Monday, April 24th, 2023, and it is 6:30 p.m. Ms. Reese, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clay,
Present.
Councilmember Klein,
Here.
Councilmember McMahon,
Here.
Councilmember Hales,
Here.
Councilmember Fuller,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson.
Here. Thank you. I'm going to, as previously stated to the city manager, I'm going to ask, we're at the changing of the agenda, and I do want to change two items, and they are K8 and K9, and I'd like to have those moved from the consent agenda to the city manager's report. Can I get a motion to have that moved? Motion by Councilmember Clay and second by Ms. Klein. Is there a discussion? No discussions. All those in favor say aye. And nays, no nays, and the ayes have it. Okay, so now I need approval of the agenda and the amended agenda. So may I get a motion to approve the amended agenda? At motions by Councilmember Hales and second by Councilmember Clay. Any discussion? Either way, I know I saw that. All right, no discussion. All those in favor say aye. No nays, and the ayes have it. We have proclamation for Suttermeyer Farmhouse celebrates 150th anniversary. And I just wanted to read this briefly. It's an invitation, and it states that the honorable members of the City Council, the Board of Directors of the Suttermeyer Farmhouse Society invites you to the 150th birthday celebration of the Suttermeyer Farmhouse. The date is June 3rd, and the board is planning a number of activities that day. We are planning to have a proclamation from the city proclaiming June 3rd, the Suttermeyer Farmhouse Day. And that's going to be read by the mayor. We invite you to be present at the reading of the proclamation. And again, that is June 3rd. That's the Suttermeyer Farmhouse celebration. And we also have on the agenda the proclamation recognition as a tree city, USA, by the National Arbor Day Foundation. And again, U-City is a tree city. Trust me when I say. We are definitely a tree city. So congratulations to the city. Approval of minutes. We have several minutes here to approve. I need a nomination for March 6, 2023 special session meeting minutes. Councilmember Clay. And a second would be Councilmember Fuller. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Nays, the ayes have it. I need an approval of March 9th, 2023 special joint session, Third Ward Housing Revitalization meeting minutes. Can I get a motion? Councilmember Hales, and then the second would be Councilmember Clay. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor? The nays, no nays. The ayes have it. A motion to approve March 13th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Councilmember Clay, a second by Councilmember Alita Klein. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. No nays, the ayes have it. And lastly, March 27, 2023 regular meeting minutes. May I get a motion to approve that? Councilmember Hales, and second would be Councilmember Fuller. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. No nays. The ayes have it. We have appointments to boards and commission, and that is Brandon Bradshaw. I'd like to get I'm making a motion to Brandon Bradshaw be reappointed to the EDRST board. And this is an appointment by the mayor. Second by Councilmember Hales. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Nays, and the ayes have it. we had a swearing in to boards and commission, and that was Mary Dorothy Smith was sworn in to the senior commission on April 7, 2023 in the city clerk's office. We also had Peter Holness, is that how I say that? Okay, I did that. Was sworn in to the Historic Preservation Commission on April 14, 2023 in the city clerk's office. Okay, we move now to citizen participation. And just wanted to let everybody know here tonight, if you wanted to participate and have a comment for the council, you have requests to address the council forms are located to the ledge just inside the entrance. Please complete and place the form in the basket at the front of the room. And our first speaker tonight would be Tom Sullivan. And Mr. Sullivan, please, your name and address, please. Thank you, sir.
I know the drill. Tom Sullivan, 751 Syracuse. It wasn't surprising the council picked Dennis Fuller to be the new council member for the second ward. This means groupthink will continue on with the council and University City will continue to decline. When the candidates for the council seat were being questioned, Councilman McMahon was trying to play Perry Mason when questioning candidate Gerald Tiers. Councilman thought he had a gotcha moment with a question about what Mr. Tiers wrote about Proposition F last year. Councilman McMahon was concerned he might have misinformed people about the sales tax proposal. Imagine that. What seemed to really be the problem with Citizen Tiers is that he had an opinion different from the City Hall group thinkers that automatically disqualified him. Councilman McMahon tripped himself up when going for the gotcha question. He was confused as to what Mr. Tiers had done in regard to his opposition to Prop F. Note to Councilman McMahon, all the campaign spending is a public record. You can look it up. The exception is those that violate the law and don't file. That would be the city of University City. Gerald Tiers was part of the 58% who voted against Proposition F last year, despite the city unlawfully spending tens of thousands of dollars on the campaign. The people of University City made it clear they do not believe University City officials, and for good reasons. Not being content with just corrupting the Proposition F election last year, the city also corrupted the Proposition M election earlier this month. Again, you violated the law. Postcard sent by the city stated, revenue generated from Prop M may go towards public safety and youth education programs. This is clearly intended to influence the action of voters. Also, there has been no campaign finance disclosure reports made. The University City government, University City Public Library, and the University City School District have taken part in corrupting elections. You've all earned the title of corrupt public officials. There will be action taken, of course, on the Prop M violations. In a case that has been referenced by the Missouri Attorney General in an opinion, it states, the use of the public treasury to mount an election campaign which attempts to influence the resolution of issues our Constitution leaves to the free election of the people presents a serious threat to the integrity of the electoral process. University City used to have honest, competent city officials. Those days are long gone. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Okay, next on the agenda is Ben Ellerman for citizen comments. And again, your name and address, please. Thank you.
Ben Ellerman, 6911 Washington Avenue. I'm here to speak tonight to represent a group of University Heights subdivision number 2. A number of our residents and the trustees are looking into potential legal consequences for the educational rezoning amendment, which would reduce the educational area from 2.5 acres to 0.45 acres in the PA district, and how that is influenced by our indentures, and also issues with the sale of the property and the change of use as well. So we just wanted to inform the board that we are looking into this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My next speaker is Patrick Fox, and I just wanted to ask Mr. Fox, did you want to wait on this item or did you want to speak now? Okay, thank you, sir. And the next speaker will be Aaron Ginsberg. Again, name and address.
My name is Erin Ginsberg. I live at 430 West Point Court. Honorable Mayor, council members, and city manager. In the last month, U City TNR's volunteers trapped, neutered, vaccinated, and returned 8 cats and placed 2 friendlies into rescue at no cost to U City taxpayers. I'd like to share an extra special kitty rescue story with you. This kitty is named Richard Parker. In January of 2023, he was trapped for neutering and vaccinations, and his colony caretaker named him after the resilient tiger in The Life of Pi. At City Paws, the veterinary staff discovered his irritated corneas were due to underdeveloped eyelids. This debilitating and painful birth defect can only be corrected with specialized surgery. U City Kitty volunteers, St. Louis Feral Cat Outreach volunteers, and many generous community donors raised nearly $2,000 to save his eyesight. While being treated for roundworms and awaiting cryotherapy eye surgery, Richard Parker turned in his feral card. He is, quote, the sweetest boy, according to staff at Animal Eye Care Associates, and he's charmed everyone he met at 5 Acres Animal Shelter. In April 2023, a lucky family adopted Richard Parker, and now this healthy orange boy is living his best life. Thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you. And we're at council comments. If any of my colleagues have anything that they'd like to say, Councilmember McMahon.
Thank you. Glad you're stuck around, Tom. I think the question you thought was a gotcha question was about whether Mr. Tears had donated money to the campaign. And so I looked it up that night on my phone, and his name he did donate to it, although he denied that. So I guess you're supporting someone who would just bold-faced lie right here when asked a really simple question, did you donate? He said yes. But what's more important to me, Tom, is ever since you got up here and started talking about FBI investigations into me and members on this council, I've had a resident driving through my neighborhood, stopping at my neighbor's house, other people's houses in the community, at my house, telling me about how the FBI is out to get me. Our safety as an issue here with some of the conspiracy type theories you toss around in here. I would be a little more careful when you say these type of things. It's dangerous, the kind of things you say. That's what's been going on in my life. I didn't mention to anybody up here. Nobody knows about it. I took it on the chin. But I would think you might want to just maybe stop with they're criminals. They're awful people. They're under investigation by the Bar Association. They're under investigation by the FBI. I've got the Attorney General after them. That's what I'm facing, Tom. Maybe you could just dial it back a little. I appreciate that you want to be a watchdog. I appreciate the things that you find and you hold people to their word. I get it. But I'm trying to ask you to hold you to your word. I'm not under investigation by the FBI. I didn't commit. Yes, you did. You've said it at meetings. You've said it. You said you're going to turn us in. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Oh, Tom, I think you understand what I'm saying. I hope I would just dial it back a little. Not saying to stop what you do. I know what you believe in. I appreciate those things you do. But some of this stuff, it crosses the line.
Okay, we're going to move forward. Okay, Mr. Fuller.
Tom, I've only been here 3 weeks. I haven't had time to be corrupted yet. You're going to stand up here and yell at me. You have my email address. I've received both your emails this week. Don't do this to me.
Okay, will there be any others? No? Okay, we'll move forward. We have nothing under public hearings and we're moving to the consent agenda and that's been amended. And can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Councilmember Clay, and can I get a second? Councilmember McMahon. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Nays, no nays. The ayes have it. And we'll move right now to the city manager's report and I'll turn that over to City Manager Rose.
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers and council members. This first item up under the city manager's report asks the council to consider approving a contract with Navigate for owner representative services and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement. The initial cost of the agreement, if approved, would be $70,000. If the project advances to construction phase, we're recommending a monthly fee of $16,500. The scope of work that would be performed by Navigate is included in the agenda packet. Briefly, they would be responsible for value engineering of the project, coordination of design, bidding assistance, and coordination of project construction. With us tonight is one of the representatives from Navigate, as well as myself. Certainly would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. And before I call the Navigate representatives, I'd like to go ahead and have Patrick Fox come up and make his comment. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry. I got those mixed up. Okay, well, okay, in reference to that, and Patrick, I'm sorry, I'll call you up at the next citizen comments. But what I wanted to say is, I wanted to ask the council, do you want to go ahead and make that motion, or is there anything that I'll turn it over? Councilmember Clay. Yes, sir.
Oh, so Mayor Pro Tem, you're asking, do we want to make a motion and then
Yes.
open discussion? I mean, I can
Right.
make a motion.
Okay, Councilmember Clay makes the motion. Can I get a second? Approving the number 8, the Navigate Building Solutions Agreement. I'm just asking for a motion before we have a discussion and get a second. Can I get a second? Is that appropriate? No second? Okay, well, then let's have,
So
what we've done is move Navigate Building Solutions to the city manager's report. So before we have a discussion, I wanted to go ahead and get a motion, or do you want to just have the discussion now before that? Let's just do that. Let's have the discussion now. And Councilmember Clay, you were first.
so thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson. So the information that we received specific to this item, under the amount, it says to be determined. So and I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be silly with this, but would we be approving a contract in which the amount that we would be paying the vendor is undetermined?
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, Councilmember Clay. The reason that it is identified as undetermined is because we cannot tell you at this point how long the construction period would last. What we're recommending is a month-to-month agreement of $16,500 that would extend throughout the construction period.
So in similar situations, what I have seen is provisions for an up to amount. And then if the contract needs to be amended, you can go through that process. I'm somewhat challenged in by this other fact. There is no date associated with the end of this contract. There's no defined term, correct?
Well, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes.
Smotherson,
Yes.
Councilmember Clay, the contract, if the city advances the project to construction, would terminate at the end of the constructed project.
So there's not and I understand that, I understand it, but there's not a defined term. So it's a little, I'll be candid, it's a little challenging for me to vote on a contract with an indeterminate amount and an indeterminate term. I do understand that construction projects are dynamic. I had the good fortune of serving on the school board in this community and was part of the team that helped build 2 schools. So I understand these things are dynamic and somewhat fluid. But I have not encountered a situation in which a contract was to be approved with an indeterminate amount and an indeterminate term. Those are really my questions. I have no problem with the concept of an owner's representative. In my aforementioned allusion to my time on the school board, we did that when we built Barbara Jordan and Pershing. So I have no issue with the concept. I have no issue with Navigate as a company. It seems from what little I've seen that they do reputable work, but the construction of the contract gives me some measure of pause as it's presented here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers, Councilmember Clay, if it is acceptable to the council, one option that you have would be to include a not to exceed amount, let's say of $150,000. And should the contract exceed that amount or appear that it will exceed that amount, it could be brought back to the council for further consideration.
Councilmember Klein?
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
one question. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question just about not having a provision for delayed work. So if there's a delay in the progress of the project, how does this fit into that? Do we continue to pay the $16,000 even though the project's not moving forward? So, I mean, I'd also kind of like to see a provision for that, because even with only 150,000, we could get to 150,000 and not be done with the project. Does that?
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers, Councilmember Klein, what normally happens is once you advance to the construction phase of it, the contract that we will have with the company would identify penalties that would be assessed if the construction does not progress, or we could place a date on that contract where it must be completed, similar to what occurs typically in the private sector. But if there is a desire to include a component that if no activity is occurring on the project, I can't imagine that Navigate would have any issues of concern with not being paid the $16,500 monthly. I don't see a instance when that's likely to occur, but just in case that it does, I'm sure, and Navigate is here, would be receptive, agreeable to including that component.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. You can turn that mic on. It's a button at the bottom.
Hello, my name is Todd Sweeney. I'm an owner of Navigate Building Solutions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the city council. You asked a very good question about duration. The reason why it's set up as a monthly cost, and absolutely happy to do a not to exceed based on 14 months, 12 months, what would be a typical time for this project. However, what we suggested is one of the strategies that we're seeing in the marketplace right now to achieve best value when you go out to bid is to allow the contractor to stipulate the duration of their project. We're actually finding we're getting better timing now than if we stipulate a duration and force that contractor to achieve it. What's happening is there's an evaluation that takes place. The bidders are not only required to then put a price on the job, but also a schedule. And you use that to evaluate what's in the best interest and the best value, as your city manager has suggested for the city. We would then be directly tied to that competitive date. So if they suggest, if you choose a bidder that's got a 12-month duration, there's another one that's got a 14-month duration and a 16-month duration. When you pick the one that is the best for the city based also with their bid amount, then our contracts tie directly to that. Then as your city manager had suggested, typically there's a liquidated damages clause, which holds everything together because the contractor has to achieve that end date, and we certainly wouldn't get paid longer. Again, we're very happy though, if you would like to have a maximum cost based upon a predicted duration and then adjust that up or down. If it comes in lower or higher, we could certainly do that as well to meet your expectations. The second question was specifically, I took too long on that one. I apologize, Mrs. Klein.
It
no,
was just if there were delay, how would that fit into the wording of the contract?
Be more than happy to have a clause that would indeed suspend our payment should there be a delay in the project. That would, as your city manager had suggested, be a bigger issue because then you would also have to delay the contractor who has liquidated damages. But it is a possibility and therefore certainly can be addressed in a contract. Happy to do so.
Okay, and
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers, I did want to comment.
sure.
We are looking at, we've combined these agreements, assuming that the project will advance to construction. That's our goal, and I know that's what Navigate wants to achieve. But I want to just stress that the initial agreement would be capped at $70,000. And you might also share, because there is an instance where you may not receive the total amount of $70,000. And so I would ask Todd to comment on that as well.
Absolutely. The initial inquiry into the services of our firm were associated with the fact that the current budget as presented by the qualified bidder on your job, the single qualified bidder, exceeded the amount of money that was available for the funding of the project or what was currently allocated to it. Certainly you as city council have the privilege to change that or do what's right for the city. But in any case, there was a delta in cost. It was costing too much. So what we did is we presented a solution based on our experience. We've had the privilege of working with 60 public agencies in the last 5 years, doing over 280 projects, all publicly bid. So we're very familiar with the protocol and can complement the services of your own staff to say, what are some things we can do in addition to help mitigate this delta in costs? We presented a two-pronged plan. One was we want to get into the drawings and really identify a number of things, value engineering opportunities, working with your design team. Benchmarking is a big component of what we do. We work with so many different police chiefs that sometimes for example, the hearing impaired systems in your courtroom, absolutely desired, but are they a want or a need? The ability to bring forth options that you can consider, your staff can consider, then you as elected officials consider to bring in best value. You may not choose to change anything, but we want to give you the opportunities to and have numbers associated with them so you can make educated decisions. That's the first prong. Not only that, but we're going to look at the schedule. Right now, the bidding contractor was at 31 months. It shouldn't take 31 months. We just don't have any benchmark data that suggests this would be that long. And if it is, why not potentially direct order? So as a public agency, you have the ability to direct order stuff through cooperative agreements, through different means that are all in accordance with state statute, but allows you to potentially get out ahead and buy some stuff and then hand it back to the contractor, eliminating overhead markups and also reducing schedule. Because right now, general conditions are costing you 40, 50 grand a month from a general contractor. So there's a ton of strategies. We outlined them in a report to your city manager that said, we are in about a 6 to 8 week period going to implement a number of strategies. The second thing we suggested is we do believe in today's marketplace that if you can bring more than one bidder to bear on your job, you can have substantial savings. Will it net all of what you need? No, but it could net 5 to 10%. But the only way to engage those contractors and get them to respond is for a firm like us to bring strength to the process. In other words, this isn't an exercise. It's not going to go back to the same guy. Bring integrity that you demonstrate every single day through a third-party resource that works for you to communicate that outward to the public so that people show up, people bid, subcontractors are interested, and you get that competitiveness. That was a 3-month journey. So we have hours associated with that. We suggested that it would be $70,000 fee for us to do those tasks, two-pronged. Revisit your drawings, work with Amy and Trivers and their team to make the changes we can, and then get it out in that market and really market it hard and get your bids that you deserve as a public agency. For some reason, if we're not able to achieve a project that meets the value that you're seeking and you choose not to move forward, I said, not only by contract, you don't have to pay us to move forward. You don't have to pay us $16,500 a month or anything, but you can also withhold $15,000. I put that at risk because I believe in what we do. We have success in this process. And certainly a number of testimonies that if you ask your peers in the industry, you know that we tend to deliver. So that's I believe we can. I think we can reduce your project significantly without reducing the quality of it, nor the value to your staff and what you sought when you first took on this vision. So that's the goal. And I don't know if I answered your question, but the $15,000 at risk if we're not successful. And more importantly, what's not at risk, if you don't move forward, I'm not helping you during the construction phase. So certainly that's backlog that I don't have. So I want to be successful regardless. Again, 16.5 is a lump sum per month, and it would be specifically tied to the competitive durations provided by your contractor of choice. So I wouldn't be able to inflate it or deflate it. That's not what I'm interested in. Make it twice as long just so I can earn a fee. That's not what I'm looking for.
Okay, I wanted to recognize, thank you, sir. Just a minute, I'm not sure if they're through with you yet, but again, I wanted to let Councilmember Hales go ahead and speak.
Thank you. I guess where I am right now is trying to wrap my head around your value proposition.
Great.
And I don't know that we saw all the materials that perhaps the city manager saw and staff saw. Are there like case studies of where you have helped another governmental agency with a project, and what was the return? What was the value return for that those tax dollars?
That's a great question. I don't have my glasses on. I can see Jeff, I think, sorry. Yes, absolutely. So in 2017, we did a study of every project we completed for public agencies and did a value proposition. Now, in many of those cases, we were engaged very early in the process. We were engaged sometimes before the architect and managed the process all the way through completion. So we're starting a little bit later in yours. On average, we saved after paying our fee 12.3%. You're like, that's funny math, right? So what's more specific than that? I can tell you on your particular job, as we went through value engineering, as we went through industry benchmarking, we brought examples and case study information with us when we engaged your administration because they sought the same question. I don't want to bring something to city council unless we believe that it can actually work. So for example, value engineering, we talked about looking at your drawings. The very first thing, I'm mechanical engineering by trade. So first thing I look at is mechanical systems. You got a 4-pipe system, you got 90 plus fan coil units, you got a DOAS, independent split systems all over the place. I've done 24 police stations in the last 6 years. I can tell you that's very robust. Now, is there a benefit to a 4-pipe system? Absolutely. It's the best control you're going to get, and you get a bit more efficiency out of it, right? So if any of you guys are mechanical contractors or have any inkling of what I'm talking about, great. But if not, the point is most cities can't afford it. It's a very expensive system. First cost versus long-term cost. What's the payout? I'm not suggesting you don't stick with a 4-pipe system. What I'm suggesting is you have the facts in front of you so you can make the decision. You know, if it's $1 million and it's 20-year payback, maybe not. Right, given the circumstances of your fiscal responsibility. So that was an example. Industry benchmarking, we see this a lot. We have, because we are trying to create a building, you're trying to create a building that's going to last for generations, right? I mean, truly, you don't have the opportunity to do another. It's taking you a long time to get to the point where you're getting ready to do a police station. It's going to be a long time before you do another one. There's always questions about what can we do to provide the best services. We find City of Clayton, for example, there was $600,000 worth of AV going into a police station, right? Security and AV. Well, I benchmarked that against what we did in Manchester, what we did at Cotterville, what we did in St. Charles. We're running pretty consistently around 350. So what's the difference? We use our benchmark data to push back on that. What we found out in City of Clayton with that Chief Bryans, is he said, "Oh, I had no idea I had this pixels on my cameras, right? I didn't know I was doing recording for 96 hours. I really only need it for 24. It's a fully functioning building. If anything's going to happen, it's going to happen. We're going to know it. We don't need a week's long." When we took those two things out alone, we saved 150,000. So we're constantly looking for benchmark opportunities. That's benchmarking. We also, 31 months, we got to fix your schedule. right? There's no reason why you have a bidder saying 31 months. There's no job I'm doing right now that takes that long. What they could be doing though is charging you while they wait for electrical gear to show up. Charging you because this DOAS right now in the market, these designated outside air units have a very long time. Pick a different unit. Let us today go out and secure the electrical gear ourselves independently with the vendor and then supply it to the contractor. When I say that, that money never flows through me. It would be an independent contractor with you, right? We do it all the time, right? That is then delivered to the contractor to install. It's a strategy that works, quite frankly, and it saves a lot of money. So there's things we're going to do with the schedule. Next thing is contract. Kirkwood School District had a issue that went out and they had 2 lines in the contract that we disagreed with. And we told this board, we told the city, the superintendent, we said, and Mike Rome, the CFO, we said, sir, if this goes out, we don't know how the contractors are going to react to this because it's going to put undue burden on them. They said, but we need to do it. It's part of our standards. They bid the project, right? It comes back 2 million higher than it should have been. So 22 million is 26 million. My partner stood in front of the Kirkwood School Board and said, look, if you allow me to change those 2 lines, it will not materially affect your job, but you let me change those 2 lines, we'll get that 2 million out. That school board looked at us and said, well, if you rebid a job, hence what we're going to do here, right? If you rebid a job, we've always been told that's going to be worse for us. It could get worse, right? That's the scare. It could get worse. We said, we put our job on the line. It came in less than 2 million under. It was a schedule issue. It was literally just a scheduling comment. 2 lines, $2 million. And I can show you the validation and proof of that. So instead of giving you a case study overall, which I did in the beginning, which is a reflection of a year-long worth of looking at our contracts and documenting that, and I can show you how we came up with the 12.3 if interested. I've had clients say, okay, I know you did job for St. Charles Ambulance District in 2017. Can you show me how you did it on that job? I can. I've got a breakdown of the sheet that supports that. But then I gave you 3 examples of specific types of things we're trying to do on the key fronts that we have in the next 6 to 8 months, 6 to 8 weeks. Excuse me. I got to stop saying months, 6 to 8 weeks. And then we got to hit the market. We got to get bidders to show up. You didn't have a bad strategy looking to get a qualified bidder. It was, quite frankly, it's got strong merit. But when it came down to only 1 qualified bidder, that hurt you. Okay. You didn't know that was going to happen. That your administration, your design team said, this is important. We need a qualified bidder. We will serve in lieu of that. Because we do so many police stations, we can work with any general contractor to ensure you get a quality facility. So that's another advantage that when paying us is what we're going to do on your behalf, should this move forward. Did I answer your question, Mr. Hales?
Yes, for right now.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson. And thank you for being here. And thank you for taking our questions.
Chaz, please. One of my colleagues is
Yep.
here as well. Chaz,
Thank you. It seems at minimum, there have been 2 amendments to the contract proposed to include an not to exceed amount, and to Council Member Klein's point, to add some sort of non-activity clause.
Mhm.
So to me, and I clearly only speak for myself, it seems like we may need to pause to effectuate, if nothing else, those 2 amendments. I notice here in the item, City Manager Rose, that it can be rescheduled. And what I would propose is perhaps we push this to the next study session and perhaps get some of the material that Councilmember Hales alluded to receiving, that apparently you are prepared to offer, get the contract in such a way that it reflects the amendments that have been discussed here. Again, I have no issue with owner representation as a concept, nor do I have an issue with Navigate as a company. But I do feel right now, candidly, a little unprepared to vote on a contract of, if we go forward with the amendment of at minimum $150,000. I think likely, to be candid, it will exceed that, but it is a starting place. So procedurally to activate that, I don't know if I can make a motion to table until the next study session.
And hold that thought so that we can have and include all other,
Yes, sure.
and I'll take that as soon as we finish discussion. Councilmember Hales, did you want to make a comment?
Well, I was interested in the city manager's response to that. The other thing I would add is, you know, we do want to move this forward. Like I'm happy with a special study session if need be. But I think it would be very helpful for all of us as well as the public to have a better grasp on this whole project.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, Councilmember Hales. The next study session we have scheduled for May 8th. You will be receiving a presentation from the Metropolitan Sewer District. So to have it as a study session item would require a meeting after that. The items that you've listed at this point, there are only two changes to the proposed agreement that you are considering. And so those are pretty simple to incorporate into the proposed agreement. So that's one thing, but that's your decision to make as to whether you want to delay it, bring it back to you with those changes, whether you want to go to a study session and have other questions responded to. I do want to emphasize, though, that we currently do not have anyone on staff that has the level of expertise in the construction of police facilities, renovation of those facilities that Navigate brings. And so the concern I have about continued delay is the impact that the market will have on this project. When the project started, we budgeted roughly $20 million for it. This was a lot for this fiscal year. We know now that the minimum amount, even with Navigate, is likely to be about 22 million that we think the project will cost. And so we can certainly, we want to make sure that we respond to all of the questions and concerns that you as a council have. But I would just ask that you keep that in mind, that being very nervous about the impacts that the market will have on this, and whether we could address any other outstanding questions that you have tonight so that we could potentially avoid having to take it to at least a study session and maybe just bring back the amended agenda at the next council meeting.
And so I would ask, yes,
Contract, I'm sorry, at the next council meeting.
yes, sir. And so I would ask Councilmember Clay, is that acceptable to you to have this pulled and then have those changes, those two changes added, and then have that presented back to the council at the next meeting?
For me, and I'm just one, I'm one among seven.
Sure,
so
yes,
you
no,
all
I
may
know,
have a
I know,
different
I understand
opinion on
that.
this. I'm comfortable with it coming back, at the next meeting with the amendments, but I think it's also critical that we receive at minimum, the information that Councilmember Hales articulated. Now, I don't think, we need an encyclopedia, but I think, to give you some perspective, sir, $150,000 is a contract amount that we rarely see. That may not be the case with other municipalities we work with, but that is a king's ransom in these parts. So I think, again, using my I voice, that is something I really want to understand completely about all the ins and outs of.
May I please request the opportunity to submit to you by Monday of next week, full qualifications and proposal book with references and letters and everything else I can put together for you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Councilmember McMahon, yes, sir. That would be acceptable. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Just some questions I had. It looks like in the paperwork we've got that the The project schedule was expected to start on March 27th, 2023, so we're already a month behind. So I think that date needs to be amended. But also that the construction phase starts when bids are received. It doesn't start when a shovel hits the dirt. So the first monthly payment would be when you get a bid.
Yes, sir. May I address that question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. And the reason why is because prior to the shovel hitting the ground, which would be mobilization, which is a valid question, we'll be working with your city administrator and his team to put the contracts together, all the documentation, the permitting, site logistics plan, especially sitting in the existing property that you're at, make sure all the safety protocols and other documentation is put in place. So though it may be, you may not see activity on your job site, it's a very active process. And time period, we're very engaged.
No, and I understand that, but it's to me, it's also part of that, because part of what's defined in here is it's the review of those bids that gets us to a point then where we have to approve somebody. And I think that that process starts to, that overlap. I just don't know if I'm comfortable with that delay where we're not really doing construction, but we're still kind of evaluating bids. And then we've got to come back and vote on something and all that at the same time. Is that when the $15,000 payment hits and then also our first month? So it's almost a $30,000 payment just in 1 month, just while we're reviewing bids.
I understand that. If it's a clarification that's required to ensure the trust and the transparency of our document, I'm happy to change that to award of contract.
I just want to make sure I know how it all flows. If we get only one bid, does that trigger the construction phase, or do we, because the contract says bids, but I'm assuming if we only got one bid like we did last time,
sure,
it would still trigger the monthly payment?
And you do have the authorization at any time to terminate our contract without cause. So there's that opportunity, but certainly that was the intent, that once we receive contractor bids, we're now taking the next step of receipt. Then we go into the process of due diligence and working with them in contract negotiations and all those things I suggested. However, again, if it adds clarity to it, we're happy to take it so that it's a formal action by you. Your formal action to approve the contract would then be essentially an action to approve us to start our construction phase. That I've seen contractors written that way, and I'm very happy to do so.
And then the termination, it's just not, we walk away, because I think the contract says that if we terminate without cause, you still get paid for time that was spent. And I'm wondering, you've already got 55. Are you still going to be charging us and say, well, we still spent time on top of that 55? I mean, all that gets kind of muddled because that language isn't very tight to me at all. That's what the language says. You'd still get paid for time spent. So theoretically, even if we terminated it, you could say, here's my list of employees and the time they spent, and you're going to owe us, these are their dollarly rate, and we're stuck with it. So I think there's a lot of things in here that need to be looked at and tightened up on those in that regard.
I certainly respect your opinion.
Okay, with that being said, Mr. Sweeney, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. And I also do appreciate you being here tonight and your company and the work that you're doing. I just briefly, and I think that there's some relevant things that actually apply to University City in reference to some of the things that you're working on right now, like your Brentwood project. And if you could briefly explain what you're doing in Brentwood on Manchester Road for the city of Brentwood.
Absolutely. So the city of Brentwood embarked 4 or 5 years ago on a project called Brentwood Bound, where they forward funded a improvement project to create a district that would be a tax generating district through retail sales and so forth that would mimic other districts along Manchester Road that thrive and are very successful. To do that, the critical element of it was to create a district that was not flooding all the time, because it was in the 100-year floodway plain. Because Deer Creek, which is a watershed that comes across at Hanley Road, it's going southbound, then turns west, runs parallel to Manchester, and then turns southbound again at Big Bend. So what they did is they invested in the rechanneling of that, not only rechanneling of that, but turning that property, that dilapidated area, into an area that would not only be allow for the non-flooding of Manchester Road, but also be a community asset. So they're putting in playgrounds, fishing lakes, ponds, trails, tying a GRG. It's a pretty remarkable, just complete redevelopment of an area that quite frankly, if you've ever driven through there coming eastbound from Brentwood Road down towards Hanley, you could tell there's a significant difference. The beauty of that project too, it was tied to the MoDOT funding, which was improving, Manchester Road. So the streetscapes is different. All in, the project is substantially under budget. We are also very proud of our ability to help that organization, that city, get grant funding, support additional funds, negotiate deals with Great Rivers Greenway, who's another public client of ours, to do some joint funding of projects in there. So again, Navigate is very proud to be a resource that exclusively serves public agencies to do what we do. And we serve them in a lot of different capacities. We'd love to do that here as we did on Brentwood, bring value. It's what our mission is.
Right. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. And good seeing you and also Mr. Jaquez out there in the audience. Before I take on Councilmember Clay's motion, and I did have a question for the city manager, but was there something you wanted to say first?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers, my understanding is that you would like to have a maximum amount established for the monthly fees that would be provided for owner representative services. That's outside of the 70,000 that would be provided for the pre-construction value engineering phase of this project. Also, the elimination of the payments during until construction actually begins or near start of construction. And the third item is to make those changes and to bring this item back to you on May 8th agenda.
Okay, and was that also including Councilmember Klein's request in reference to the delay and
Yes.
that's okay, that does include that. Okay, all right. Go ahead. Yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Clay.
Just to clarify, and I think this might have been Councilmember McMahon's point, so he can certainly make the clarification, but was it the payment would not start until actual construction? Is that the amendment, City Manager Rose, that you're saying?
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers and Councilmember Clay, I don't know that I would agree that it or recommend that it would be at actual construction, because we want Navigate to assist us in the bidding and the evaluation process of those bids once received. And that, I believe, is outside of the scope of the initial contract.
So the 70,000 allows for the rebidding, correct? And then
Councilmember Clay, that is correct. But the 70,000 provides for the value engineering of the project, which is to identify areas where we can have the same impact and reduce our costs. I think he talked about the PVC pipes, for example. It would include assisting us with the preparation of the bid documents. It would also include the marketing of this project to bidders.
okay, and so the 70,000 includes all that, and so that process will end at some point, and then the quote construction process, which is actually bid, to Councilmember McMahon's point, bid evaluation, other things, that's where the 16,000 kicks in, correct?
That is correct. Once we start the process of creating, I believe, the bid documents, I need to look specifically at the contract, but certainly the evaluation of those bidders' proposals and the preparation of the bid document, we would recommend Navigate be allowed to participate in all of that process, because we don't currently have someone on staff that we believe has that level of expertise.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. Thank you. And let me just say, literally for the record, I'm not opposed to owners representation or navigate or y'all getting paid a fair rate for a fair day's work. Not opposed to any of that. I just think this particular item, the way it was presented, needed some tightening up as articulated by my colleagues. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay, and then the last thing that I would have, and again, thank you, Mr. Sweeney. This is the question for the city manager, and it's just a real, very quick question in that you're doing this under a professional service agreement. Is that correct? Can you tell me the difference or explain the difference and explain why this wasn't bidded out, to other contracting or management companies, so that I guess the people here can actually understand why this is a professional service agreement and not bid it out?
Sure. Some of that has to do with legal issues that I will allow John to respond to as far as the legal requirements. In general, though, we recognize the level of expertise that Navigate has in this field based upon the documentation that we received, as well as references that we received on Navigate. In addition to that, Navigate has a established relationship with Trivers, who is the design team for the project. Instead of having to bid out and hoping that a company could establish that rapport, we thought that it would be a nice fit already having that relationship established with Navigate. And I'll turn things over to John to talk about legally why the project is not required to be bid up under professional services. Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Essentially, the code specifies which contracts are required to be bid out, and a contract for professional services is not required under the code. So that's why it wasn't required to be bid out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we move to Councilmember Clay's motion and I'll let you go ahead and complete that.
Well, I
If in
don't
fact-
think we made a motion initially, so it's just at this point a discussion item. Is that correct? So no formal
Well, there-
action.
There's no, we didn't make a motion on this.
So I think
don't-
we discussed it. I think the decision was to bring it back with the changes. So I don't think a motion needs to be made, does it?
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers, and I don't believe an action needs to be taken by the
Okay.
council. I'll simply place this back on the May 8th agenda with the changes that have been requested.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we can move on now to, and city manager, the rest of that report. Thank you, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson and council members, this item asks that the council consider approval of the facade program for the total amount of $188,000. I would ask Deputy City Manager Smith to present this item.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. So if you recall, we did include in the fiscal year 23 budget, $150,000 to implement the facade improvement program, which is a program that has been established in the city prior to my tenure. But we had not accepted any applications, I believe, since fiscal year 20 due to the pandemic and whatnot. So we did open up applications for that program this year, and we received 12 that completed the process, produced all the documentation that was required, and met the requirements, with the exception of a few items that we discovered this morning that were not eligible expenses. One project had requested a roof, and that is an ineligible expense per our program guidelines. However, for that project, if we take the roof out, it's still a $65,000 project, so we would still recommend that business receive the full amount. So we received 12 applications. We did take them through the EDRST board a couple of weeks ago, I think the first Thursday of this month. The projects did exceed $150,000. So we did request additional funding for the program because one, we have a large reserve for EDRST. We had not run the project or the program in a couple of years. And the EDRST board agreed to add an additional $38,000 so that we would not exceed $188,000. That said, I'm not sure what would be the best method of if you all want to go through the projects or if we wanted to discuss the ones that there were some concerns about. But I do have Rajay with me. Rajay actually received the applications, processed them, and put together the summary, which is included in your packet with pictures so you can see the structure and a summary of the work that is requested. Each applicant was required to provide a cost estimate. So we did get numbers from contractors so that we could see exactly how much, or at least estimate how much the projects were costing. So with that said, I can proceed at the council's pleasure. I don't know if you want to go through them one by one or
Well, before we start with the council, I'd like to have Patrick Fox come up and have his comment, and then we'll move forward with council questions.
Hello, my name is Patrick Fox. I live at 1309 Purdue Avenue in University City. Look through these applications. I had some observations I want to share with you all. One thing I want to make sure that I delineate is it's a question sometimes of whether you can and should. I think everything here that is being presented, you can fund. I think sometimes when you have a set budget, and this is a circumstance where going over budget, you have to make some difficult decisions sometimes to remain within that budget. Couple observations I have. 7649 Delmar includes in their proposal trash removal. Not really sure how that aligns with facade improvements. 7843 Olive includes a security system. Also not sure how that leads to facade improvements. And I couldn't find anything kind of telling me the qualifications of this on the city website. So I do apologize if I'm overstepping. It just didn't seem to be appropriate. 6185 Olive has already received EDRST funds, and they did receive it at the last time you all presented them. So it seems like that's a pretty healthy one for consideration for not funding at this time. There were also two in particular I wanted to share because I understand the goal of the EDRST is to improve the economic conditions for businesses within University City. Two of the properties are not wholly listed as commercial properties. So when you talk about the qualifications, there are certain criteria that need to be met. You fund up to 50% or a max of $15,000. Well, if you have a building that is in part residential and commercial, it would seem to be in the interest of fairness to proportionally take a slice of that 50% proportional to what is zoned commercial for that particular property by the assessor's office. So Bobby's Creole is only 69.5% commercial. So that would be an amended amount of $10,425. He also had a very strange range in the budget from $28,000 to $53,000, which is quite a large range. I don't know if there was more information provided in terms of that. 7301 Tulane is 54.4% commercial. So 54.4% of the except 15,000 would be 8154.91. So just some of those things, if you do have to make some very challenging decisions when you have a request that exceed your budget, sometimes you have information to make those decisions. So just wanted to share that with you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now I'll open up the floor to the council. If you have any questions specifically, Councilmember Clay.
Yes. 8327 Olive is vacant currently. And I understand from information from my colleague has been vacant for some time. So for me, it's hard to understand that. I understand they want to make improvements, but they've been vacant, and nothing here indicated a line of sight towards opening anything. And so I'm concerned that we would get potentially a situation where we improve a property. This is gutter replacement, exterior lights and new windows, doors and windows. Only then to potentially, I don't know, have it sold. And so I don't know if there are provisions that prevent the sale of property, a certain period in which the current owner must maintain it. But that's my concern as it relates to this specific property. The Tulane property, which is in my colleague's ward, so I certainly allow them to opine on that, is also vacant. I'm not sure, they would know the history better than I. I'm not sure if that has been vacant for some time and what the plans are there. But those two vacant properties kind of jump out at me. And the one on Olive, I am more familiar with.
You need your mic.
Sorry, mic wasn't on. So for the Olive property, we were aware that it was vacant. The program as it is currently established does not distinguish between whether the property is occupied with a business or if they are improving the facade to attempt to recruit a business. So that certainly is something that the policy for facade improvement could be amended if that is the pleasure of it would go to the EDRC board and then this council, but there was no distinction between whether the property was actually vacant or occupied. Did you speak with the gentleman as far as business recruitment? You want to speak to that or? And you're correct, there is currently no timeline for putting a business in there. If it is the pleasure, again, these applications did go to the EDRST board and they did consider them before taking action. But for us, our hands are tied because we have the policy in place. And so we basically look at what the eligible expenses are versus the ineligible expenses. And we put together the information to present for decision.
And I'll be candid, I'm in a bit of a quandary. So if you find me searching for words, that's why, because I want to support business, particularly those on Olive, but you know, $15,000 is a nice amount for business that isn't open, has not articulated any plans to open.
And I think it would be an option if the council so chooses, because we're not approving these in the work starts tomorrow. So we would be approving the application if that is the stipulation that you all wanted to place on it, is that the funds were contingent upon a timeline for a business entering the structure, or if you want to take it out completely, that's certainly the council's pleasure. But we are presenting what was given to us. I mean, we received more applications than this. These were the ones that met the requirements of the program, and we are presenting them for decision.
Yeah, I'm not interested in changing the rules of the game midstream. I mean, I would, to the degree this is possible, and I'm sure it is, but like I have an objection to this one. I would want to pull this out and understand more about the circumstances related to it before we grant $15,000 to a vacant building that by at least one account seems to will continue to be vacant.
That's fair. I've made note on my end. If we want to remove them, I'm not sure how we'd go about that procedurally, but
we can address that very quickly. Let me have Mr. Rose, City Manager Rose, if he has something before I recognize Councilmember Hales and Ms. Klein.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Clay, regarding your concern about the building being sold, I think one option that you might consider is simply adding onto the agreement that we have with the owner of the vacant building, the component that if it is sold within, let's say, a 12-month period, then that would trigger a reimbursement of all funds to the city. And that I believe would address your concern that it's simply money going towards improving the building to be sold, which some might argue may not be a bad thing, but if that's your concern, we could include that component that would result in the city getting a reimbursement if the building is sold.
And there is an agreement that each one of, once we get to that part, everyone has an agreement that they would have to enter into. So I do think that you could tailor your agreements to, of course, have that language in there for any of the ones that you may have concerns with.
Okay. But my other concern is them actually doing something with the building, because to have them replace gutters and exterior lighting and replace windows and doors and have it sit for 5 years vacant, I'm not seeing a lot of real value in that. So that would be my concern. So yes, I mean, I think I would, if possible, want to extract this one. And I don't know how that would happen in terms of procedurally what that does for you all, but I would not want to necessarily consider this one right now without more information.
Mr. Rose, yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Clay, one of the other items that you might consider is the visual impact that a improved facade could have on the corridor. And even though the building may be vacant, the way that it has deteriorated detracts from the ability of staff to recruit other businesses along that corridor. So you could look at it, one perspective being a beautification project. And even if they don't fill the building with a tenant, it visually would look better, which might have an impact on the overall economic recruitment of other businesses as well. That's something to consider.
And City Manager Rosette is certainly a fair point, and I agree with it. I know this building, it needs a whole lot more than some doors and some gutters. I can tell you that much, but I'm not unmoved by your point. It makes sense.
Councilmember Klein.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add to what Councilmember Clay was saying is when I look through this, I'm not really seeing the expectations of the owners, because I think it's great that we're having this relationship, but I think that there should be some expectations, and maybe there are, I'm just not seeing them in terms of how they're going to interact in our community. So if there's a vacant building, it could be that people end up going there and parking and throwing trash or whatever, because there's not someone there that's occupying that building, even if it does look nice on the exterior. So I'd like to see some expectations for the people getting this money. And what is their role in giving to the community in gratitude for that?
Thank you. So we do have a standard contract that each applicant is required to enter into. This is, again, our first time running the program, so I have not had the opportunity to read one of those contracts through. It's a few pages, I think maybe 4 or 5 pages. So I can certainly go through that and let you all know what the expectations are of the owner, because it is a contractual relationship. So there are indeed expectations of them. I have not gone through the contract cover to cover to be able to tell you right now what those are.
Mr. Fuller.
I'm familiar with the Tulane property. How do we negotiate these properties that are part residential and part business? Which this particular property, I've been familiar with this property for over 20 years. And it's been 2 apartments for years. How do you negotiate? And this says the applicant's 50% owner. So who owns the apartment?
Thank you. That's a good question. That is not something that is spelled out in our program as it is currently listed either. It only notes that you have to be a for-profit business, and it has to be commercially zoned. So it does not distinguish between whether it's a mixed-use property or strictly commercial. So that, again, I'm not sure if the board had encountered that previously. Because again, it's my first year running the program, so I'm not, and by the board, I mean the EDRST board, because that is our first stop before we get here. So I'm not sure, because the program does not prohibit mixed use properties. And one could argue even if there are residential properties, if it is the landlord applying for facade improvement, that landlord could be considered a business. Again, and I'm not sure that that's what's going on with either of any of the properties that are mixed use, but that argument could be made. But that said, we went by the program that as it is written, and there was no prohibition against a mixed use property. It just has to be zoned commercial, and it doesn't even, the owner actually doesn't even have to be the applicant. The business can apply, and they just have to get written permission from the owner. So
well, and I'm a little confused as to how do you own the business in the building, or 50% of the building, and that's the business, and the other 50% is the property is a rental. So thank you.
Speaking of the 50%, so that's actually one of my notes that I should have marked out. So I did get clarity on who the owner was. As Brooke mentioned, some of the applicants were partial owners of an LLC. And I was like, well, who's in charge of the entire LLC itself? And so I did get confirmation from that person that they did approve those renderings and everything.
Oh, okay.
and we did send out a zip file earlier today that would give you all of the application materials that we received, and there were a lot. So there are drawings, renderings, landscape plans in those files for you all to go through. The EDRST board preferred the summary, which is why we went through that process of passing on what we presented to the EDRST board. But we did submit those files this morning. I believe they were sent out this morning or early afternoon, if you wish to look through all the materials that we've received for these applications.
I did get it late. I got it when I had it on my phone. My phone is too big for my phone.
Oh, yes,
I
it's
will
a
look
lot.
at it. Thank you. Thank you for all your work. And Mr. Fox, thank you for bringing those statements up before, because I think they're good questions. Thank you.
And if I may comment on those, Mayor Pro Tem, so for the trash removal, that one stuck out to me as well. I did go back and look at that. That is not existing trash removal. That is a part of the work that would be performed. So included in that estimate was trash removal / cleanup. So that just needed to be spelled out a little more. That they're not asking for money to pick up trash that's around their business. That's a part of the quote they receive for the work that they would like to be done. To the question about security systems, that is actually an eligible expense for facade improvement. That is clearly listed as an eligible expense. And then for the entity that previously received funds, I was actually surprised to know that there is no limit on how many times a person can apply for funds or how often they can get it. That has been my experience in previous places where you can maybe only get funding once every 3 years or once every 4 years, but that is not part of this program. There is no limit. That said, I've already had conversations with the EDRST board about us possibly tightening up some of these these areas of the program as it is currently listed. One thing they wanted to see was more applicants outside of the loop. They were very adamant to me that they felt that when these programs are run, that the businesses in the loop tend to benefit the most for them. So we were very I think Rajay went out on foot to the businesses. So we were very focused on getting the word out to the other businesses in the city. But that is just one area that the EDRST board has identified that needs to be tightened up. Of course, as we've gone through this process, This time, both of our first time going from application open to application closed, we have both identified suggestions that may make this run better, but right now, these are approved based on the program as it was drafted whenever it was created. I'm not sure when.
Mr. Hales.
Thank you. Thank you for all of this. And I also wanted to thank Mr. Fox for his comments. I think the question about a mixed use space does raise the question, although I think it's not a question for tonight, of tightening up the program. I did find this morning the 2019 standards, which went back, were basically almost identical to the 2015 standards. But I do think that's definitely worthy of a conversation at EDRST, and I'd be curious also at their view on, because EDRST is economic development retail sales tax, how that fits in to businesses and buildings that do not provide retail sales tax. On the cover page, it says this cannot be rescheduled.
Yes, so we did put that it could not be rescheduled. However, if that is your pleasure, we can certainly do that. The reason being is that when we started this program this year, we wanted to try and get these projects completed by the end of the fiscal year. Reason being, when I started here, and even today, we still have projects that have not been completed from fiscal year 20. And so with EDRST programs in general, we are trying to implement a policy where the funds awarded must be spent in the fiscal year. It's cleaner for us. On our end, it's cleaner tracking the projects and making sure that we're not carrying, and it's not necessarily a big issue to carry things to the next year, but we have 3 projects from fiscal year 20 that are currently open. So we're trying to prevent that from going on and on and on. So that's the reason why no was put down. We can certainly try again next year because we are already in April. So if that is the pleasure of the council, if you wish to reschedule, it can be. But the reason why was because we were trying to get these projects up and going and completed hopefully by June 30th.
Right, and I think that I think we'd all like for that to happen. If it cannot be rescheduled for 2 weeks from now.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, Councilmember Hales, yes, the item can be placed on the May 8th agenda if that's the desire of the council.
And in terms of the fiscal year closing at the end of June, can that be a carryover to complete it?
Councilmember Hales, that's correct. The funds that have been allocated can be carried over as a part of the budget process.
Okay. I guess my position on this right now is, you know, I would like to see this go through, but I did want to confirm, you indicated, if I'm remembering correctly, that the EDRST board did not actually look at all of the detailed applications and pictures and plans, or did I?
Correct. They received what you have. So that's, they did not want to go, they felt that was an administrative function. They did not want to go through all of the requirements. We did create a summary sheet to show them that we had received the required documents. So any plan information, occupancy permit, business license, we did create a summary sheet to show that we had received and verified all the required documentation.
Okay, thank you. I can only speak for myself. I think that either us or the EDRST board ought to have eyes on what's being proposed in detail. I didn't have an opportunity today. My work schedule got very hectic this afternoon. So I didn't have an opportunity until I was in this room, and then the zip files wouldn't open on my phone. But I would much prefer to have an opportunity, at least until May 8th, to be able to review that, sit down in front of the computer, go over it. I don't want to micromanage, but I definitely want to have an understanding of all of these projects, proposals, renderings, beyond the summary. So I will leave it to my colleagues.
Okay, and Councilman McMahon, did you have something?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Smitherson. Yeah, just as part of the contract, I don't know if it's in there, but I don't know if it'd be worth checking into as well as that the recipients would also agree to maybe an inspection that goes beyond the project itself. So kind of dovetailing with what Councilman Clay was talking about with the vacant building, it gives us, our staff, an opportunity then to look into that building to see what else is cooking. Because if it's just somebody that's, basically white box on the outside and the inside's a mess and nobody's going to move into it, it gives us a chance to do an inspection. Because the more often you can do that, the better those properties will be. So that might be something to include in that contract. And I think these are hard decisions because I understand what Mr. Clay is saying, but we've also got somebody who owns that property without a mortgage, free and clear. And so they're paying taxes and insurance. And if they might be waiting for a buyer, and this might be the one that gets somebody in there that's going to do something with it. How do we know what his intent is? We'll never know if this is what gets him to sell. And then somebody comes in. Now we got somebody who's got a mortgage and he's going to need a business and he's going to need to remove it. And he's going to get it. So who knows? Those are tough questions to answer. I don't have the answers.
Take Councilmember Clay, and then I'll have a statement, and then we'll move forward with
Yeah,
this.
just quickly, I agree with Councilmember Hale's proposal to bring this back on the 8th.
And I did want to say, okay, and thank you, sir. And I do agree that we should actually push this back to the next council meeting. But I also wanted to say one thing, and I'm only going to speak because I'm a third ward councilman, and I've expressed this to my colleague in the third ward. Two of the properties I'd like to see not there at all, and that is 8327 Olive and 8423 through 37. I'd like those removed. And I can speak about that later, but I can actually say one thing. And I want to say something in reference to Mr. Rose's improved facade and what that means. Olive is interesting in that Olive is not Big Ben. Olive is not Manchester. And what I mean by that is that Olive has buildings that are not contiguous. If I'm saying that correctly, they're not connected. So the fact that you improve one building has absolutely no effect on the building next to it, because this building has a Chuck-a-Burger, which is Lamb's Garden, sitting next to it. So if whatever improvements happen to these buildings doesn't affect the building next to it, meaning so overall, and you have to understand, I've lived on Olive 50 years. I'll give you a perfect example. There's a white building. They did a great job in improving it, and it's in the 8300 block across the street from this. And it is a beauty supply store, whatever. They did a great job with that building. It affects absolutely nothing on Olive in reference to that improvement. But that building itself looks great. So again, I'd like to not have these properties. Now, there's another reason. Anything in the 8200 to the 8500 block of Olive, I believe that the city should not or be looking at limiting investment in that area, simply because I'm a third ward representative. Development isn't over. And I'm going to be asking at some given point in time, I'm talking to my colleague, to issue an RFP to develop that area. And the reason is and again, so I think it's counterproductive for the city to make investments into something that in another year or two may not even exist. So again, I those are the two properties that concern me. I'll leave the 7301 to my colleagues, but in the second ward, and I agree that this should actually be pushed back to the next council meeting. With that being said, we'll move on with the agenda. Thank you. We have unfinished business and nothing under unfinished business, and we have new business and we have resolutions. And can I get a motion to approve resolutions 2023-6, certification of April 23 general municipal election results? May I get a motion to approve that? Motion by Councilmember Hale, second by Councilmember Clay. Any discussion on that? No discussions. All those in favor say aye. And no nays, the ayes have it. May I get a motion on resolution 2023-7, application electronics recycling collection grant, St. Louis County. May I get a motion? Ms. Klein is the motion and Councilmember Clay is the second. Any discussion on that? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. No nays, we have the ayes have it. Now, just for an informational bit, and that is resolution 2023-8 is not going to be voted on tonight, but it was provided into this package so that it gave a deeper information to bill number 9511. So I just wanted to let everybody know that that resolution will be on the next agenda for approval. But again, it was just provided in this meeting to give context to Bill 9511. So we'll move on to Bill 9511. Can I get somebody to introduce that bill? Councilmember McMahon and Ms. Reese, please, first reading.
Bill 9511, an ordinance authorizing the city of University City, Missouri to issue its taxable industrial revenue bonds, Dearborg's University City LLC project, Series 2023, and a principal amount of not to exceed 34 million for the purpose of providing funds to pay the cost of acquiring and constructing an industrial development project in the city and authorizing the city manager to enter into certain agreements and take certain other actions in connection with the issuance of the bonds.
Thank you. Okay, we move on to council reports and businesses. Any council member have any reports on their committees or anything that they want to actually state? No comments? All right. And Ms. Reese, do we have any more citizen participation?
None at this time.
Thank you. Council comments. I open the floor to my colleagues. We have no comments. Well, I'll make one. And again, good to see everybody out tonight, but I actually wanted to make this statement and put this statement on the record. And that is that I actually took my mother out one weekend, a couple of weeks ago. And it was a Saturday and she wanted flowers for her garden and her pots in the backyard. So we went to Costco because Costco, she said Costco has flowers and they did have plants. So we went to Costco in U City. And then when we left Costco in U City, we then turned around and she wanted a hot dog and to play the lottery. And we went to Quick Trip so that she could get a hot dog and play the lottery. Now, that's significant. It is important to understand. And that's why I want this on the record, because not only did we not leave U City, we didn't leave the third ward. And that's the point that I want to make. So thank you all. And do we have a executive session? We do. Okay. Motion to go into closed session according to the Missouri Revised Statutes 610.021 and 1, legal actions causing of action or litigation involving a public governmental body and any confidential or privileged communications between a public governmental body or its representatives or attorneys. May I get a motion? Councilmember McMahon, second. Mr. Hales, any discussion? No discussion. I guess that is a voice. Roll call. Ms. Reese.
Councilmember Klein.
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Hales.
Aye.
Councilmember Fuller.
Aye.
Councilmember Clay.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson.
Aye. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you.